Imo may be planning to turn the entire One Piece world into a massive magic circle, and the way that they could be doing this is by using these giant country-sized bridges. Tequila, rum, vodka, and bourbon wolf have remained a massive mystery to the One Piece fandom for many years at this point, but I think I may have just cracked the code to these insane construction projects that have been going on for literal centuries. I think that these massive pathways will help Imo take over the entire world, and my thought process all starts with this symbol, the Mark of the Holy Knights. When it was first revealed that Shanks had this mark in chapter 1152, I got a little bit suspicious. I kept looking at it and I kind of wanted to know why it looked so familiar and really what it all meant, right? Symbology is really important in One Piece and Oda is all about that stuff, so all major factions have symbols at this point, from Jolly Rogers for the pirates to the world government, and all of these symbols carry some pretty large weight, kind of like my bench press. No? Alright, I didn't think that was gonna land either, but I gotta try. So, what does this symbol have to do with the 4 giant bridges? I've got you, don't worry. What I've deducted with my excellent detective skills is that this logo looks like a perfect cross, and I recently made a video about it where I said that it reminds me a lot of the markings for Earth in our own solar system symbol list. It is the very same cross, but with a circle around it. And so I had hypothesized that by looking at it from space, the One Piece world would form a perfect circle, and it would be bisected by the Grand Line and the Red Line, forming this very symbol. But then I realized that maybe, just maybe, it's even more visibly apparent than just that. Because the 4 enormous country-sized bridges might just form the ring around the world, and then when you overlay the Red Line on top of the Grand Line, you just get this symbol. But you may not have realized that that creates a new problem I need to now solve for you, which is how do I know that these bridges are even placed to do this? And then a follow-up question, why would that even matter if that were to be the case? And yeah, well, those are pretty fair questions, dude. Let's start with the how, and then I'll explain the why to you. And honestly, I'm just kind of using some logical deduction at this point. We do know that Tequila Wolf, which was the first bridge we ever learned about, was confirmed to be in the East Blue, and that somewhere else in the world we have 3 other similar bridges, Vodka, Rum, and Bourbon Wolf as well. We have actually already seen 2 of them, as during the Roger Pirate flashback in chapter 967 we do see one of them, and then Oda later confirms in SBS volume 111 that they did not see Tequila Wolf, and since we've seen Robin go to Tequila Wolf during the time skip, we've got 2 of our 4 that we've already seen. And well, considering that with Tequila Wolf, one of the 4 of them is in one of the 4 blues, the most logical conclusion, I hope you agree, would be that these other 3 are also in the 3 other blues. And I guess we can also assume that they have a major purpose now, which is preparing for the big floods during the final war, you know, the one that's happening pretty much right now. I mean, Ivankov even suggested that this might be why they're being built during the Vegapunk message, and I actually kind of think so as well. When you really think about it, it seems very natural that the world government would make these high-rise bridges as they prepare for entire islands to vanish and sink under the water. Especially when you consider that this world is usually traversed by ship. That's the main means of transportation here. And at first, it does seem a little bit odd to need these massive giant pathways across the ocean, but seeing as Imo isn't a big fan of pirates, as we kind of figured, and wants to control the flow of, well, everything, forcing society to use these roads would let them actively control where anyone goes at any time. And I mean, that makes good sense and all, but I do just believe that there is another reason that they're being built too, and it's to help Imo finally take over the One Piece world for good, because they haven't quite managed to do that yet. Okay, you're probably wondering at this point, how? And it's pretty simple actually. I think that this formation helps create a planet-sized magic circle for Imo that they can use. I mean, at this point, we have seen Imo use these types of circles with the Abyss to teleport people, activate Domi Reversi on really powerful people like the Giants, and even summon deadly weapons, and I do think that all of this might be hinting at their big, grand goal. If you want me to spell it out for you, it does seem to me like Oda might just be trying to pull a Full Metal Alchemist here, to the extent that Imo, with with their abyssal magic could be using the Red Line, the Grand Line, and these massive bridges to create a world-sized abyss marking to do something absolutely insane. Don't believe me? It does sound a bit wild, I get it, but let's face it, the formation of it does work out pretty perfectly. As you see here, if the bridges do form the outer rings of this earth symbol, when you lay them all out, you then have a center point that lies right on top of Pangaea Castle and the Eve Tree, or I guess if you wanted to flip the earth on Reverse Mountain. We do know this because, well, Marijoa is placed directly on the opposite side of the planet of Reverse Mountain on the Red Line, and it's directly above Fishman Island, which, as we know, is a place that Joy Boy failed previously according to the poneglyphs, and, by the way, also a place destined to be destroyed by Luffy one day. And since the Eve Tree provides light to Fishman Island, we do know that it would have to go through the Red Line up to Marijoa, or at least it is somewhere inside of the Red Line, below the Holy Land and above Fishman Island, where we basically only see its giant roots. So that means that we know that all of these crazy important objects and places are in one big center point, and seeing as Marijoa is stated to be at the center of the world, end quote, I think it's very safe to assume that this is the marking point for the center intersection of the Red and the Grand Line, and that Reverse Mountain is on the opposite side. And all of this matters because that means that on top of this massive mark would be Imu inside Pangaea Castle, right at the center of everything. And in case you didn't notice, Imu loves ripping these crazy magic circles out left and right. When Imu appears in Elbaf, they summon a magic book and start slinging spells that all have these circular markings. That's also how the Abyss magic stuff summons the Holy Knights and the Gorosei, which I think we can pretty confidently say has directly to do with Imu's magic abilities due to the shared symbols and the fact that all the Holy Knights revere Imu directly. And actually, I do want to double down on something that I think also gets looked over a ton in the story by a lot of people, which is crazy considering it's so obvious how Oda was setting it up when you really look back at it. What I'm talking about is that the Gorosei have always been connected to these magic circles, as they are all over the Room of Authority during the Gorosei's first introduction in chapter 233. In other words, Oda has been wanting us to see the importance of these magic circles, and despite not really using them until the Egghead Island arc, it is very clear that Imu and the Gorosei using them has been an official part of Oda's grand plan the entire time ever since they first were introduced. And so what's to say that these giant bridges, another really odd element that Oda has been teasing the importance of for many years, that, by the way, have been built ever since the Void Century for literally hundreds of years, aren't in a very similar spot. It does feel like they may all be connected, and I think that their placement is the key to why they exist. Because if they line up how I think they might, then suddenly the Abyss's magic circle wouldn't just be a little tiny mark or, you know, the size of a giant castle floor. It would cover literally the entire planet. But admittedly, we do know that the symbol isn't necessarily specifically the same Abyss mark, because it's said that the Abyss marking is what allows the Holy Knights to teleport, and we do know that this mark is technically different looking than this very specific Holy Knight symbol, since we can see what appears to be an actual Abyss mark on Summer's elbow when he first appears in the story. But still, I do think that this symbol, the one on Shanks' elbow and all of the Holy Knight's armbands, has a much more diabolical purpose. Because to me, it could mean that Oda is using it to foreshadow the giant earth marking that Imu has been building for literally hundreds of years across all the oceans, and we finally seen what it might be able to do. Now, I don't know about you, but it kind of seems to me like Imu has this enslave the entire world kind of vibe going on as a villain. Not sure if you'd agree, they seem to be a little bit of a control freak maybe, at least when you dig into what their actual actions have been. And let's just list some of them off, shall we? They restrict knowledge from the entire world, they use the Marines and the Holy Knights to force kingdoms to act and behave in certain ways, as was revealed by Herald in chapter 1153 when he remarks that the world government is preventing him from making relations with other kingdoms. Imu also hired the world's premier scientist, Dr. Vegapunk, to build a bunch of insane tech, including the Mother Flame, all for some other big giant devilish purpose. And then combine all of this with the fact that they refer to themselves as a god, and it's kind of the perfect recipe in my opinion for someone trying, to rule the world in a very specific, controlling manner. Well, let's take this a step further even, because we do know that it's the ancient weapons that have been causing these giant floods, and that Emu can destroy entire kingdoms and islands and raise the sea level basically at will now, yeah? So what if all of this is just part of their big master plan? The idea would be that Emu forces society to move up higher and higher, up to the level of these massive bridges, and then they can activate a massive magic circle that enslaves the entire world in a massive domi reversi. And I think the reason that they'd have to be up on the same level is that it's a relatively flat marking that's only been shown to be on perfect leveled surfaces so far in the story. But I also think that, as you'll see in just a moment here, there might be a few delays or additional conditions that require the world to fully flood first before this plan can be fully put into action. And actually, speaking of flood prep here, it does seem like the Raja pirates may have also realized that this could be the big plan, which then helps back up the ideas I've been discussing today, because I've talked about it before, but really take a minute to look at what all these pirates chose to do after they made it to Laugh Tale and uncovered the actual true history of the world. Let's start with Rayleigh, who started a business where he coats ships with bubbles so that they can survive underwater. Then we have Crocus, who built an entire island inside of a whale, and then Scopper moved to Elbaf, the single largest island in the world, with a massive tree that pierces the literal heavens. Heck, I mean, Odin tried to break down the walls of Wano, which we found out would release a massive warship in the form of Pluton. And this somehow even actually lines up with the idea that Spencer here, the intelligence officer of the Raja pirates, is actually secretly Big News Morgan's, something that I've been speculating for a while now, and now that we know the Raja's crew official roles, that makes even more sense. And in case you forgot, it's the dude that lives in a literal flying ship. It kind of sounds perfect for avoiding the surface world, which is at risk of being completely submerged. Long story short, it's been a theory of mine for a while now that Morgans was the one who turned Roger into the Pirate King through the use of his newspaper in an effort to help change Emu's control over the world by creating a new pirate era. Which would, by the way, also line up perfectly with why Morgans also specifically made it so that Gear 5 Luffy was on the new bounty poster. And I mean, come on, look at the duck head of him on Roger's crew. It is giving big bird energy, right? I mean, I personally think so at least, but maybe this is for another time. Then we also have Shanks, who actively recruited an entire broken crew of specifically non-Devil Fruit users who wouldn't drown, and did so after he went up to Marijua, finding out a lot of stuff. And considering that his family is like the Holy Knight family, and we do know that the Holy Knights are familiar with Emu's plans, I wouldn't be surprised if Shanks learned all of this from Garling or even the Gorosei directly. But also, Roger did whisper something to him before his death and breaking up the crew, and so maybe the crew explained it to him before he went up there. The jury is still out on that one, but I'm sure we'll find out sooner than later. All we do know is that the Raja pirates learned how to counteract some of the Abyss powers, as Scarpa Gaban showed off the ability to cancel out, Summer's regeneration, and they all seem to prepare to avoid the surface world in some way, shape, or form through different means. So I don't know, but to me it sounds like someone's trying to avoid being around for Emu's massive magic circle plan after the world has been flooded. But Manu, why wait? Why not just do all that right now? And yes, there is a little bit of a weird quirky thing going on with Emu's plan at this point. It does seem like Emu is incredibly powerful, so why in the world would they need a magic circle anyways? And why wouldn't they just make one right now? And well, technically there are a few reasons why this could be the case. I mean, for one, it may be that scale is the biggest factor. Emu can toss out small to medium-sized magic circles through their own power, but we all know it's a pretty classic anime trope that scale is a really important and big thing. So in order to unleash an ability on a really wide and large area, like, I don't know, a planet, it would possibly require a circle that Emu simply doesn't have the ability at this point to create out of thin air. And this would make a ton of sense too, since the bridges at the center of this theory have been under construction for now over 700 years. Meaning that Emu started their construction pretty soon after the end of the Void Century and their big battle with Joy Boy, their last major defeat or roadblock. And so it would seem that Emu has kind of just been preparing for these bridges to be finished the entire time in order to then do something. All they need is to finish building the bridges first though, but as we've seen, construction is kind of going slow, so maybe they need a little bit more manpower, or should I say big man power, giant power? Yeah, I mean, those bridges could directly be the reason why Emu thinks right now that the giants are the key for them to win the final war. I mean, Gunko literally stated to us that Emu thinks the giants will help determine who wins the final battle, and this may be exactly why and how. They are incredibly advanced builders, we learned this in chapter 1153 as well, as the people remarked that the giants of Elbaf specifically have advanced building techniques. But not just that, they're just straight up the oldest living civilization with crazy, weird, advanced gadgets like light roads that they sail on and the rainbow stuff and whatnot. Elbaf's people, as well as their capacity to build, could just be the thing that Emu truly needs to finally complete the bridge, like pattern, the 4 bridges. And that could be exactly what they wanted Harold to work under them for, and why they're currently overthrowing Elbaf now and not previously. And actually adding on to why Emu couldn't just pull the trigger immediately, it could be that the flood is essential for this plan to even work. I mean, come on, you do know that Emu has a ton of connection to the ocean itself, like their name, Emu being the reverse of Umi, the word for ocean in Japanese, so maybe it's some equivalent exchange sort of deal where the water needs to get converted into something, or maybe the amount of water in the world somehow directly ties to Emu's power level. I mean, it does line up with Emu being the sea devil, a thing that has floated around for a long while now. And the idea there is that Emu's name backwards is again Umi, the word for sea and ocean, plus consider that design is very reminiscent of the Umibozu, a famous ocean yokai in Japanese mythology known for sinking ships and taking sailors. And this idea is even doubled down on during Sabo's raid of Marijua, as Emu begins to grow and transform into a shape that does resemble the Umibozu pretty much perfectly. So this definitely lines up with them being the enemy of Joy Boy, the first pirate, the first person who's freely saved the ocean, but also it kind of falls in line with the entire abyss power idea. A deep, endless ocean with deep, bottomless holes like Enies Lobby in Lulusia does kind of sound like an ocean god creating deeper holes to an abyss at the bottom of the ocean to me. So from that perspective, raising the ocean and the water levels does make a ton of sense then, and these giant bridges, while forming some massive circle, could be part of their big plan to not only pull off a grand magic attack, but also just control the few remaining citizens that survived their massive purge. And when you consider that the various definitions of the word abyss directly refer to regions of hell, catastrophes, and even just political differences, Emu channeling a power known as the abyss does speak a lot to their character. I mean, they are the evil king of the world, and they have, these dark satanic powers, and, are busy trying to bring about this great calamity. And so to me, all of these things kind of speak to this idea, and I just want to know what the actual catastrophe is going to be. And I do think that this next idea might seem the most promising, because what if it's actually even crazier than just that? Like, what if this isn't a circle used to activate a power or to convert the ocean into something else? What if it straight up is a giant summoning circle? Yeah, I do think that there is a good chance that Emu needs to raise the sea levels and create a massive circle so that they can unleash a great hidden power that is hidden deep in the abyss that they draw their power from. Now, I don't think that Oda's about to say, hey, there's a massive demon hiding inside of the One Piece world, but I do kind of think that that's exactly what Oda may be implying. Like, literally look at the mural again and tell me that this isn't screaming to you, giant dark evil creature gets unleashed and destroys the first world, the second world, the third world. I mean, we have a giant dragon, the serpent, the giant demon with the forbidden sun in their hand. All these 3 creatures are unbelievably big compared to the other creatures in this mural. I mean, the giants of Elbaf think that this thing is massive, and I mean, compare them to the giants, the giant robot and the ancient giant in the mural, or what might even be Zunisha here. These dark entities are colossal, like almost titans. Hell yeah, finally figured out how the ancient titan thing works in the series, so we've been speculating about that for a while too. If you know, you know, if you watch the videos. Sorry, it's a little bit of a personal theory of mine I've been pushing for a while. Anyhow, what if the dark entity that we see in the mural isn't actually Emu, but instead the being that Emu draws their power from? I mean, remember, for Film Red, Oda said that a thing like Todd Musica, the giant demon monster that gets summoned, is something that kind of exists in a way in the real One Piece story at some point. And what if this demonic creature is actually hidden away in the abyss, or it's literally named the Abyss? Whether that's some magical dark plane of existence or deep inside the world itself, there is a really good chance that a giant creature that Luffy needs to defeat is hidden somewhere, and Imo may use the bridges to finish their summoning circle to finally bring it forth. This would also explain why it hasn't just been summoned yet, and it's because the Mother Flame and bridges aren't done yet to finally create the circle necessary to draw it out. Now, we do know that the eternal flame that the Ancient Kingdom had is nowhere to be found at this point, and Vegapunk needed to recreate something like it in the form of the Mother Flame. So if that technology is part of the summoning ritual and the circle is required, then Imo is kind of on the cusp of finishing it right now. But not only that, I also want to draw your attention to the fact that the Eve Tree is just right at the center of this all too. The fact that Imo is so determined to conquer Elbaf, home of the Atom Tree, and lives on top of the literal Eve Tree right now just can't be a coincidence, right? Unless it is, and well, that would kind of suck for this video. No, I think there may be some secret thing going on with this as well, and I'm not sure. It could be that the Sunlight Eve Tree is gonna serve as a core or center for the ritual that Imo wants to perform, or it's connected to the Forest God and the Forest God unleashing the demons and the devils, and that could be connected to that giant creature. Again, I'm not quite certain yet how it will fully tie into things here. All I know, it's very suspicious, and suspicious is normally very freaking important in One Piece. Now, if you're still asking me what I'm thinking here, personally, I would suspect that it's tied to the symbolism of Nika being Adam and Imo being Eve. I mean, these two potential lovers were then the dawn of society, but one was corrupted by the devil. And I do think that there is something there with Imo being the pawn of the abyssal devil and living on top of the Eve Tree, which could just directly be the source of devil fruits themselves. I'm not certain yet, but that sounds like something that could make sense. But honestly, it doesn't even fully matter because the plan may already be in motion. The Mother Flame is done, and now the bridges need to get built completely for Imo's master plan to finally start. This could be turning the entire world into demons. It could be summoning the abyss creature to the surface, which might just be, you know, the demons that they might be drawing their powers from. Imo may not be the Sea Devil after all. Maybe this thing is, and they're calling it forth. Maybe Imo is summoning it every time they want to reset the world, and then it goes back to slumber. I mean, the true enemy of Nika, the true enemy of Joy Boy, and the true enemy of Luffy could be this thing. And so the One Piece world right now might lie at a literal cross-section of chaos and peace, which might just also be the cross-section of tequila, vodka, rum, and bourbon wolf. But hey, that's just a theory, a One Piece theory. Nah, I'm just messing with you. It's a fun idea, and I do think we'll be learning a lot from you know, the upcoming chapters. A lot of crazy stuff been happening recently. I mean, we now know what Rocks looks like, right? But there might be one person who can still stop this plan, and I don't think it's Luffy. I'm talking about a false sun god, the Cursed Prince, Loki, because this guy is destined to destroy the world and bring ruin to Elbaf, but that might just straight up be a good thing, because this might hinder Imo's plans and give Luffy the chance that he needs to finally defeat the dark creatures. And if you want to find out what the truly terrifying power of Loki could be, check out this video where I break down the hidden and secret power that lies inside the next king of Elbaf. Otherwise, thanks a lot for watching, and thanks so much to all of our fantastic Patreons here. We've been really grinding away with amazing content over there for you, so go check it out. We have a free newsletter if you know, don't have any money to support but still want to be up to date with weekly One Piece stuff. And enough talking. Next video on Sunday. I'll see you then.